Welcome to the African News Review podcast, where we cut through the noise and get to the truth. I am your host, Adesoji Iginla, and each week we are here to challenge the biases, prejudices, and misinformation in the Western press about Africa. Using historical context and contemporary insights, we set the record straight and reclaim the narrative. Tune in every Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern as we uncover the real stories and reshape the conversations about Africa. This is the African News Review podcast, reclaiming Africa's narrative, one story at a time. Yes, greetings, and welcome to another episode of African News Review. As you can see on the screen, Brother Comrade Milton Alimadi is not in, and that's due to the fact he's under the weather. He sends his due regards, and we have a capable stand-in, and it needs no further introduction, but I will introduce her all the same. So she's Fubara Eneli Esquire, author, Self-Love Revolution, the host of Rethinking Freedom, and co-host of Women and Resistance.
Thank you. Yes,
And
this is not
welcome.
Comrade Milton Alamadi unless he's dressed in drag. And I will not even attempt to fill his shoes. The man is a legend, but I'm grateful and thankful to be a part of this today.
No, we're honored to have you. We're honored to have you. And so, without further ado, first things first, how are you, first and foremost?
I'm incredulous that we're already on May, what is today, May 25th? Of course, it's the 5-year anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. We'll be talking about genocide today. I think that is important that we put a marker down. Yes.
Place that in context. Yeah. And so, without further ado, we go to the first story of the day, and it needs no introduction, really. It's Trump's claim, which comes from the BBC. It's first and foremost, let's start from the logic. I think I will save this story for later. So the story comes from The Guardian, and it's basically headlined, Trump's white genocide claims ignore reality of life and crime in South Africa. And it's filed in by Rachel Savage in Komati in Mpumalanga, South Africa. The lead writes, U.S. President intoned death as he waved articles purporting to show violence against white minority. And it goes on. It was an ambush crafted straight from a reality TV playbook. The Oval Office meeting with South Africa President Cyril Ramaphosa started with exchange of pleasantries before Donald Trump shouted, "Turn the lights down low," and a video was played to support his false claims that the white South African farmers were being murdered for their race. Ramaphosa came prepared with championed white South African golfers Eneli and Retief Gosek, who the golf-mad Trump referred to as friends, as well as South Africa's richest person, Jonah Rupert. So what was your initial take when Trump came up with the idea of showing a video purporting to highlight the so-called white genocide in South Africa?
So many thoughts on this. I don't know that we have the time to unpack all of this. My first question, and I heard his remarks after this encounter at the White House, is why Ramaphosa even decided to make this trip to the White House. There is a way historically that oppressed people have given credence to, have legitimized their oppressors. Given who Trump is, given the despot that he is, given the fact that he's a 34-time convicted felon, given all his strong arm tactics, and quite frankly, the way he functions as, I will say this here, my words, not yours, functions as a bully and a terrorist. Perhaps I'm being naive, but I would not have honored him with my presence on his terms, on his ground. You concede so much power. It wasn't a neutral meeting place. You came to his place where he gets to craft and dictate to a large degree the narrative that he wants to push out. And nothing that he did should have surprised anyone who'd been paying attention, even from his comments and his actions from his first term as president of the United States. And now that he's operating with such impunity, and we saw what he did with Zelensky, I personally would not have gone to the White House as the president of my own sovereign nation. That's just the beginning of it. Now, in terms of the claim of not just genocide, but white genocide, it would be a laughing matter if it wasn't so serious, because it requires us to suspend any sense of belief, to erase any sense of history that is not even that long ago. I mean, it's existing right now, to buy into his concept of white genocide. And when people try to dictate a narrative and you start buying into the words and the terminology that they bring up, that's really another concession of power. Because what is the definition of genocide to begin with? Right? So there's a definition that comes from the United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Crime of Genocide, which was adopted in 1948 in response to they claim the Holocaust, as though there's only been one Holocaust. And of course, we know they're referring to the Jewish Holocaust. They didn't come up with that definition in spite of all the other evidence of genocide, including the formation of this place now called the United States of America. And so, but that definition was intentional and systematic destruction in whole or in part of a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. If I were, and I guess, depending on, you look at who has power, and of course, the South Africa gave up its nuclear powers and so on and so forth, because they did not want a Black majority to have control over that. Same reason they destroyed Gaddafi in Libya and so on and so forth. I mean, if I were to show up at the White House as the president of South Africa with this particular president, I would have come, and I wish I could access it. It's on a shelf away from me right now. I would come with a copy of We Charge Genocide that Paul Robeson and Malcolm X, presented to the United Nations. You're going to talk about white genocide? First of all, who has intentionally and systematically destroyed any white people in South Africa? I mean, if that's not a projection, I don't know what is, in terms of what white people did to the indigenous people and the original owners of the land in South Africa. This is not ancient history. They documented it. 13 Land Act and so on and so forth. You came in with the power of the gun and dispossessed people of their land, killed off thousands, if not millions of people in South Africa and beyond. And then you turn around and charge white genocide because any concept of equality for you degenerates who actually have an inbred sense of inferiority, which is why you can never play on an equal playing field. You always have to use the gun to try and give yourself an upper hand. You try to project your madness and your fears of retaliation by the people you've oppressed on you. You think we are going to be as degenerate and as inhumane as you have been to us, to you. And it's really just a projection of their fear. And of course, total suspension of anything in reality. Because indeed, it should have been Ramaphosa coming with video and documents proving Black genocide beyond a shadow of a doubt. But I will stop.
I mean, you said it should have been Ramaphosa. Ramaphosa could have said that, are you aware that 31 years on, since 1994, that is, that despite the dismantling of so-called apartheid, in terms of economic well-being, 8% of the population still owes 72% of the land. Is that an equal society? That would have been the question for Ramaphosa to have posed. But I understand what Ramaphosa's problem was, because, I mean, we'll get into it in the course of the story.
Before you even read
and
further,
they'll probably come up.
What the heck?
And it continues.
Were Ernie Els and Retief Goosen doing there? What was Elon Musk doing there? Yeah, please tell us. Yes.
They were supposed. Thank you very much. So here is the thing. Actually, probably should lend itself to it. Ramaphosa is no longer, how can I say?
Is it?
A black man in the true sense of the word. Now he's a black elite. Yes, he's a black elite. So he has to protect his position. And what is his position? He has to protect the money class. And so when he comes there and brings people who understand the attitudes of the money class, he's not speaking for South African people. He's speaking for a specific class of South Africa.
And there were no black South Africans in the elite he could have come with?
Created, again, when you know what it is you're dealing with, you lend hand to whatever it is you're coming to deal with. Minding, he brought golfers, knowing fully well the guy likes golf, and he also understands the role of money. So he brought the wealthiest South African.
And how did he accumulate that wealth?
If you understand who you're...
How much bloodshed brought about that wealth? Is that not the proof of the genocide?
That's the thing.
I'm just asking.
Because you're now part... Yes. No. I mean, you're asking pertinent questions. But because he is now part of that same class, he can't call them out. That's why he's gone into a power-sharing agreement with the inheritors of the National Party, which used to be the Apartheid Party, which is now rebranded as Democratic Alliance, which now sits in government with him, instead of the likes of the guy whose voice we heard on the video, Julius Malema, who wanted the redistribution of the land. So when Mr. Trump was saying, but listen to what they're saying. Yeah, listen to what he's saying. He's talking about a pained issue. And as far as I remember, in the United States, you have what is called the freedom of speech. Whether it is egregious to you or not, the person is still allowed to say it. The same thing obtains in the South African in South Africa. So again, you pick and choose what is palatable to your cause. It's regarding the facts around what it is you're trying to put forward, which is you don't have a leg to stand on. And we shall see more of that in the course of
So again, you concede power by coming onto this territory, because Ramaphosa could have played video of Trump, good people on both sides. He could have played for 24 hours video loops of Trump saying things worse than whatever it is Malema supposedly has said. And of course, we know that, what's his name? The man that we have rebranded Mandela from a warrior to a gentle, kind grandfather was also singing that same song. And of course, the United States of America is doing everything that it can under Trump's administration to restrict freedom of speech. So there's so many ways that he could have played this. I understand as a culture, the people of African descent always being magnanimous, always being kind and gentle and respectful. But I tell you, sometimes I really wish that we will follow the Old Testament part of the Bible, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and that we quit turning the other cheek because it has not benefited us.
I think that's the take of Malema. He will probably buy into what you just said now, because he did say it at once that it is land appropriation without compensation. I'm trying to do the best South African accent I can. So that's his take. So in February, Trump signed an executive order cutting aid to South Africa, which is one of the reasons why Ramaphosa was there, accusing it of unjust racial discrimination against white Afrikaners minority who ruled the country during apartheid. The order criticized South African law allowing land expropriation in limited circumstances and set up a program to bring Afrikaners to the US as refugees. The first group arrived this month. Now, so that video was likely a surprise for the South Africans. It spliced together clips of Julius Malema, the leader of the far left economic freedom fighters, opposition party, saying we are going to occupy the land and we must never be scared to kill, before singing the controversial Kill the Boer song. Boer is another name for Afrikaners and means farmer in Afrikaans. Malema's, whose populism is designed to shock and whose EFF won just 9.5% of the vote in South Africa's 2024 elections, will probably be thrilled with the attention after being buoyed up by South African courts ruling that Kill the Boer song is not meant to be taken literally. So again, we've spoken about the freedom of speech in terms of how things are taken out of context to serve specific purposes. If you tie that to the United States, can you draw any parallels?
Who is this Rachel Savage? When I'm reading articles and reading books, I always want to know who is the author, what is their background, what is their motivation. There's so much in this, and I know you have many other articles for us to review. Malema, whose populism is designed to shock. Where is the critique of Trump? Like, what are we doing here? And whose EFF won just 9.5? And so what, you're trying to marginalize him? Can we talk about the illegitimacy of this human being that is in the White House, who should never have been allowed to run in the first place if he had not turned the legal system on its head, if you will, and of course we had other participants to drag out any justice for his misdoings, his crimes. And so when you try to marginalize Malema, but you have nothing to say about Trump, I really don't want to waste my breath on this human being and this propaganda that she's putting out. And the paper. I mean, just to begin with, like, what is your moral ground? What is your basis for pointing fingers and trying to marginalize one person when you are talking about Donald Trump? I mean, he's meeting with Ramaphosa, who's also, as you pointed out, an elite, quite wealthy himself, who at least had the decency to put his businesses in a blind trust when he re-entered politics. So, we know he was an activist. We know he got arrested. He was in solitary confinement for about 11 months. We know he was the head of the trade union in terms of their negotiations. We know that he played a principal role in negotiating the quote unquote end of apartheid, which really never ended, because what is political power when you are dispossessed of your land? And if you don't have your land, you can't eat. And let me tell you, coming to the United States to ask for what? Aid? Tell you what, sign your damn executive order and please rid us of all the white people, all the Afrikaans in South Africa. Give us back our land and we will feed ourselves and we don't need your damn aid. How about that? And again, I know there are a lot of people listening to this and saying, well, you're being politically naive and so on and so forth. I did get a degree in political science for what it's worth. But if we keep playing by these people's rules, we don't win. So anything that Rachel Savage, I don't know where she got that last name from and why she kept it, has to say is completely irrelevant to me.
I mean, again, it's the nature of what we do here, which is
important because there are people who watched that and took it at face value. And most of the documents he was showing and the pictures and the videos, like you said, taken out of context. And when you look at what's happening in the United States of America, where we have consent decrees that Biden's administration worked out with police departments that are actually engaged in genocide against a group of Americans, so-called Americans anyway, you basically tear up the paper that it's written on and say to hell with it, and you are systematically trying to erase any sense of people of African descent contributing in any meaningful ways to this country, to the United States of America, but you want to turn around and have this, as she did rightly point out on this one, reality TV kind of show in the White House. How far the United States has fallen, but maybe not far at all. Maybe they're just showing who they've always been. And you know what? I'm here for all of it. But I'm not going to play along at the idiot.
And, in light of that, we go to our next story, which is, and it reads, it's from Reuters, and it reads, Trump's image of dead white farmers came from Reuters footage in Congo, not South Africa. And it goes on. It says, the story was filed in Johannesburg, May 22. U.S. President Donald Trump showed a screenshot of Reuters video taken in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I repeat, video taken in the Democratic Republic of Congo in what he falsely presented on Wednesday as evidence of mass killing of white South Africans. These are
As
all white farmers,
even though that's not
that
true,
are being buried, said Trump, holding up a printout of an article accompanied by a picture during a contentious Oval Office meeting with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. It goes on. In fact, the video published by Reuters on February 3, subsequently verified by news agency fact-check team, showed humanitarian workers lifting body bags in Congolese city of Goma. The image was pulled from Reuters footage and followed deadly battles with the Rwanda's-backed M23 militia. The post did not caption the image. That is, the blog post from which that image was pulled did not capture the image, but identify it as a YouTube screen grab with a link to a video's news report about Congo on YouTube, which credited Reuters. Now wait for it. The White House did not respond for a request for comments. Andrea Whitberg, managing editor at American Thinker and the author of the post in question, wrote in reply to Reuters' query that Trump had misidentified the image. She added, however, that the post, which referred to what Ramaphosa called Ramaphosa's dysfunctional, race-obsessed Marxist government, has pointed out the increasing pressure placed on white South Africans. So what do you say to that? So now you've been caught out. What do? You double down and you start calling government names.
If you would scroll back up, because it's important that we do close reading as we're reading information. And I know that in this age of social media, we just kind of scroll. Yeah, you can stop right there. We just kind of scroll and we don't really read full sentences and think through it. So it said, the image was pulled from Reuters footage shot following deadly battles with Rwanda-backed M23 rebels. What ammunition manufacturing companies are in Rwanda?
Last time I checked, I don't believe they have
really backing the M23 quote-unquote rebels.
The Rwandan government is heavily
that's what I'm
by
saying.
the US government.
Let's talk about these things. So you put in these words and people just read it and you're like, who is backing Rwanda? Who is benefiting from the role that Rwanda is playing in the Congo, and to what effect? And if you thank you. And if you show that a few white people died, and listen, I believe in the sanctity of all life, what are the numbers of the Africans, the Congolese, who are dying? What has been the impact? So, it's like, whose life matters? If we're going to get upset about the loss of life, let's look at all the loss of life. Let's look at all the lives. And let's not have a hierarchy of, oh my God, 8 white people were killed and buried. Oh, well, okay. Let's look at a whole generation that's been wiped out. And let's go further in the history of Congo and look at the whites led genocide against Black people that has lasted for centuries. Are you freaking kidding me with these stupid news stories? Okay. And then it goes on to say, scroll down. She said, we can't call a spade, something about the White House misidentified. Yeah, keep going. Yeah. Andrea Whitberg wrote in reply to a Router's query that Trump had misidentified the image. Again, suspension of all belief. With everything we've seen and know about this man, he misidentified. Where is he lied? He is clear. At least his handlers are clear on where this came from. And if he cannot independently think and ask questions, then perhaps he should not be in the role that he's in. He misidentified. No, he's a bold-faced liar. There is nothing that man says that is based in truth. And why can't we just say that? The liar-in-chief in the White House did it again. It wasn't a misidentification. He has a very specific goal. He wants to create an apartheid system here in the United States. They are afraid of the fact that they are going to be the racial minority in this country, and they want to create America as this bastion of whiteness. And he needs to have a narrative that would allow poor people who are being oppressed. I'm here in Texas. I drive from courthouse to courthouse, some in rural areas. These people don't have a pot to piss in. They don't have a window to throw it out of. But they are following a billionaire who is wholesale selling the country, making money hand over fist, and holding some morale. What are you talking about? So all of these people who don't call it what it is are part of the problem. He didn't misidentify nothing. He is protecting whiteness. He's clear on what he's doing. And to the extent that you don't have the courage to call him out on it, you are part of the problem. Can I say F all of them? And I don't even cuss. My parents at my house with me at this time, and they would be deeply mortified to hear their daughter not speak in nice Christian tone. Let me calm myself down. Because I might just get a talking to because I think they can hear me through these doors. This is how we raised you, but you know what? It's high time that we call. We just need.
Just taking a quick break here on the African News Review podcast, but don't go anywhere. If you're enjoying our deep dive into the real stories behind the headlines, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Every Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern, we're here to debunk the myths and bring you the truth about Africa. Want to help spread the word? Share this podcast with your friends and leave us a review. It goes a long way in helping others discover the real Africa. Without further ado, let's get back to setting the record straight.
Yeah, so following on the lines of reading line by line, when she said, however, that the post, which referred to what Ramaphosa's
where did that post come from?
Race-obsessed Marxist government.
Who is labeling?
No, that came from...
Okay, So how
Andre,
is Ramaphosa running a dysfunctional, race-obsessed Marxist government, but they are completely silent on what Trump is doing here in the United States? The way they are rolling back all of the civil rights, all of the rights that we so-called fought for and gained. That is not a dysfunctional race-obsessed, whatever, white nationalist. I won't put Christian in it. That is not a dysfunctional, race-obsessed, white nationalist government. Like, where do these quotes come from, and why do we give them credence? To hell with Woodberg as well, as her friend Rachel Savage.
I mean, I've come to believe in the last couple of years that anytime they make a projection,
no question,
it's somewhat
and
of a confession.
White women, they're about to catch the hell that they think is reserved for Black people, because their white men don't like them either. And patriarchy is white patriarchy, white male patriarchy. That is what they're aiming for. So you guys keep propping up this man. And I call him a man because I'm a very generous human being. Otherwise, I might use some other words referring to Trump. How dare they? But
the footage from which the picture was taken shows a mass burial following an M23 assault on Goma, filmed by Reuters video journalist Dafo Kanati. That day, that's Kanati speaking now, it was extremely difficult for journalists to get in. I had to negotiate directly with M23 and coordinate with the ICRC to be allowed to film. Al-Kati said only Reuters had the video. He,
say again, what else he said.
It goes to show that.
What else he said. Scroll up again. In view of the world, he said, President Trump used my image.
Al-Kati
used what I filmed in DRC to try to convince President Ramaphosa that in his country, white people are being killed by Black people. Okay.
And then you wanted the reason why Ramaphosa came in the first place. Ramaphosa visited Washington this week to try to mend ties with the United States after persistent criticism from Trump in recent months over South African land laws, foreign policy, and alleged bad mistreatment of its white minority, which South Africa denies.
How do you negotiate with a liar?
The elephant
who
in the
wants to see you decimated? He is a sworn enemy of Black people. He has no regard for you. So on what basis, what ties are you trying to mend? The only ties he wants with you is the same thing he's trying to do in Ukraine, which is open up your doors, let me walk in, take whatever I want, and to hell with your people. So what ties exactly are you trying to mend? Ramaphosa needs to be on the continent of Africa. He needs to be visiting Caribbean countries, and he needs to be figuring out how we come together to provide for ourselves what we need, because we have everything the world is looking for. Mend ties with the United States for what? You can't mend ties with this man. The only thing Trump understands is we have power and you don't. Carry on.
So, well, speaking of power, the reason Ramaphosa was dragged in the Oval Office, I was actually saving this for some would say basically was, cornered, was basically for two reasons. One is the fact that Elon Musk wants to launch Starlink in South Africa. And the business established enterprise laws in South Africa says any company that comes in has to sell 30% of its stake to Black Africans within South Africa.
Trying to
you all know who Elon Musk
suggests that the South African Constitution might be superior to the United States Constitution, that it actually wants to bring about some measure of equality? Is that what you are suggesting? I'm sorry, because those savages, even though we don't bear that name, they couldn't possibly have created something superior to what America has. But carry on. Yes. So
no, the United States is the bastion of freedom. I mean, you have have the Statue of Liberty, you have the freedom of speech, a freedom to bear arms. You can do basically anything. You can even call out your president anytime you feel like. You can write op-eds about your president without anything. Nobody's going to search your phones when you
You are
come to
being
the
facetious
airport.
at this point, right?
You cannot be stopped on the
because I don't
street.
want this to be lost on your listeners right now, your viewers right now. You guys understand that he's telling jokes right now. Okay, because in the other podcasts that you do on war and women and resistance, every Black woman based in the United States that we've looked at has had an extensive FBI folder. So I don't know what you're talking about, but carry on, sir. It's your show. I'm just a guest.
No, you were comparing. No, you were comparing the United States and what's it called? You were comparing United States and South Africa. So I had to give you a balancing act in line with
in
the
line
ideals.
With whose ideals? Who are you speaking for?
Besides, in lines with the United States ideal, on the top of the Supreme Court, it's written, all men are equal before the law. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Since we're doing that,
yeah, we continue.
Permit me to read something that is not on your screen, and I'll tell you the source of it once I'm done reading it. And where is that band who so wantonly swore that the havoc of war and the battle's confusion, a home and a country should leave us no more? Their blood was washed out, their foul footsteps pollution. No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave, and the star-spangled banner in triumph doth wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. That is the third stanza of the Star-Spangled Banner, the United States anthem. And you have an issue with Kill the Boer? Boy, listen, I'm trying to maintain my, I'm an officer of the court, as I get reminded every day when I go into court. I have to conduct myself with a certain decorum. Are you kidding me? Kill the Boer? That is not an official anthem, but your U.S. anthem, the third stanza says, no refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave. That is your official anthem, and you want to point fingers at who? I'm sorry. Carry on. We're in your universe. Carry on.
Well, like I said,
your Fox
we
News
have to be
now, the
fair and balanced on this channel.
Thank you for letting me know. I'm going to give this seat back to, not that it was ever mine, but Comrade Almighty, you can come back and get this seat.
So, I mean, to be sincere now, a bit of South Africa's history, so to give people proper context. 1902, following the Second Boer War, and the Boer War was between the United Kingdom and the Dutch settlers, the South Africans. Majority of them.
Did you call them the South Africans or the colonizers?
Going into battle
we
with
just need
the
to keep
British.
our terms clear here. Okay, thank you. Yes, yeah.
All the colonizers. Okay, let's just call them the colonizers for the benefit of this. So colonizers. So 1902, following the Boer War, like I said earlier, and the United Kingdom trying to subjugate the colonies who got there before them. Yeah. So they did what most people do not understand. The first time it was done, the idea of a concentration camp was a British idea. And they put the Boers in a concentration camp. 22,000 of them died as a result of them being placed in that concentration camp. But eventually, the British, seeing that they wanted to control the Africans, but made a deal with the Boers that as long as you allow us a chance to gain access to the mineral wealth around here, then you can do damn feet whatever it is you do. And so what did you then have? You had the Land Act of 1913, which essentially says Black people cannot own any land within the Republic of South Africa. Subsequent to that, you had 1948 apartheid policy, which expressively created what the Americans will refer to as Jim Crow segregation laws that moved the Black population into basically wasteland. And what do you have then? You had what then became apartheid, and subsequent in ensuring that that system stayed in place, you had atrocities committed against Africans. On March 21, 1960, you had the Sharpeville massacre, which is where Africans went to a police station taking their pass cards, which was a regulation then that you had to have a pass, without which you cannot move around South Africa. They went to burn their passes in front of a police station. The police came out, turned the guns on them, and the rest, as they say, is history. When the fire settled, 69 people were dead, 180 injured. The man who led that march, Robert Sobukwe, would be incarcerated again. The first time that law was used on the African continent, which is someone had the right over you to basically sign a detention, an unlimited detention order, which only the government can lift. When it was eventually lifted, he was, deported to a part of South Africa where he was broken away from his family, and he died there in 1978. 1976, 2 years before that, there was the Soweto massacre, which is of school kids. And why were the school kids protesting? Because they were not allowed to speak their native tongue, but instead had to be lectured and speak in Afrikaans. That massacre is the stuff
of legend. Go back to the United Nations definition of genocide. Who has been systematically and intentionally erased? Projection.
Wow. True. Projection. Exactly. Projection. As we would read. So again, based on what we have here and the way the media operates, if you've read the stories so far, none of them have gone into the history of the place. They talk about the Native Land Act, but don't tell you what the Native Land Act entailed. People were basically murdered.
Basically, people were
on their farms.
And what are those numbers?
Were murdered on their land.
What exactly?
Exactly. We don't know. We don't know. So you have all of this, and this kind of selective outrage of so-called white genocide becomes farcical. And the reason it becomes farcical is we've allowed a habitual liar, like you called him earlier, to make that the stuff of legends. That so much so that now we can't even call him out as a barefaced liar, because he has a very vociferous crowd who will go on there, repeat the same thing over and over and over again in the interest of so-called
and we keep giving him the audience and the platform and choosing to be characters in whatever reality TV show he's playing around, which has dire consequences for all of us. Again, I come back to my original point. I think Ramaphosa played it as well as he could have, and he tried to stay, dignified and his comments afterwards. But I would, in the first place, not have dignified that felon, that criminal, with my presence. If a football player, right? Because we like to say they're not as intelligent, which we know this particular football player is very much so. If the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles can decline an invitation to go to the White House, didn't make it a big deal, just said he had other commitments. Why are African leaders, so-called African leaders, showing up to the White House? They're legitimizing this idiot. We need to learn from our history. There are no ties to be mended here. What ties? When you say mended, it came to mend ties. If I'm mending an outfit, there was a way it looked in the first place, which was desirable to me. And so when there was a little tear or a button fell off or the zipper broke, I wanted to restore it to what it had originally been. What ties are you mending? Maybe he misspoke. You really want things to go back the way they were between South Africa and the United States of America, that imbalance of power? And you're really going to negotiate with I'm not going to call him a madman. He is a criminal. You're going to negotiate with him on what terms? How do you see that working?
And even when you say mend ties, it's deeply problematic in the sense that how would you mend ties with the United States that was the foremost, foremost supporter of the apartheid government?
And Reagan,
the apartheid government,
they were going to continue those policies to keep propping up that racist government, the government that was engendering genocide against the owners of that land. Well, it's not ancient history at all. This was in my lifetime. So we need to also ask ourselves how we're moving and why we continue to think that, first of all, that these news sources, we should read them because we are in the world and we should know what they're thinking and all of that. But do I lend any credence to them beyond understanding this is how the enemy thinks and then we need to move accordingly? Yeah. So I don't care if it's Washington Post. I don't care what they stamp on it. You guys are not credible. You are all part of this criminal enterprise. I'm sorry, go ahead.
There is one other issue that I want us to really put into context. When you talk about the region of Southern Africa, I don't just mean South Africa. The region of Southern Africa, starting from Malawi, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Mozambique, South Africa itself, Namibia on the other side, the land question, and I'll even bring in Kenya. The land question is still a very pertinent question that needs to be addressed. The fact, for me, the painful thing here is Ramaphosa and Mnangagwa in Zimbabwe were foremost in fighting the imperialists. And they are also the ones that are undoing what was won on the battlefield.
Snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, something along those lines.
Exactly. In Zimbabwe, they've just passed a bill that will see them compensate people who, again, we saw the Native Land Act was used to expropriate land from you. In Zimbabwe, called Rhodesia at the time, it was also the Land Use Act that was used to expropriate land. Now you're going to use state funds that belong to Zimbabwe, to compensate people who stole land from you in the first place.
Well, but they have precedents. And, back. So many African countries are structured and, based on what their colonizers had set in place. So in Britain, when the so-called slave trade ended, it's the African Holocaust, it's Amafa, but we won't call it a trade. But when it was supposedly, considered illegal in England, what did they do? They compensated the owners of enslaved Africans. Not the enslaved Africans, they compensated the owners of the quote-unquote owners, like you can own a person. In the United States of America, who got reparations? Abraham Lincoln compensated people who supposedly, owned enslaved Africans. And I say supposedly just because the fact that you could think you can own somebody, but we know, at least on paper they did. And so, it would make sense for Africans who keep copying Western culture without any critique to also think that it is a form of justice to compensate the thief and the murderer and to legitimize them. How asinine is that? But here we are. And I suppose in those countries, don't their lawyers wear the embroidered wigs on their heads? Well, there you have it. It's so important that we get white people to love us. We've been on that quest for centuries and have nothing to show for it, but we're still on that quest. They need to go read Kwama's 2000 Seasons. You know, that throng of people consistently moving towards white death instead of claiming their liberty.
And it's, again, he goes to the basis of Ngugi wa Thiong'o's book, which is Decolonizing the Mind, or even, what's the gentleman? Decolonizing the African mind specifically.
Of course, your readers, your listeners should also go and read your book, Africa Illuminated, Revealing the Continent's Remarkable Facts, because when you were talking about Southern Africa, you know, a lot of times we talk about Africa, we don't even have a concept of what we're talking about. So go get that book, because it breaks down, it shows you the map, it shows you all the countries that are now, you know, that comprise the area called Africa today. And you get a bit of understanding, a bit of history about each country. It's just very digestible, but it gives you a little bit, you know, better context to understand what is going on when you review all of these news stories. So everyone, go out and get a copy of Africa Illuminated by none other than our brother Adesoji. You can get it on Amazon. You might have it in 2 days.
Yeah. I also do like, share, and subscribe. You know, each one bring one to, if you're finding value in what we're talking about. And so for our next story, we go to white genocide in South Africa. So here we have a legal backing for what it is. So in this story, we sort of get a sense where the idea of white genocide came from. And you would not believe it. So claims of white genocide not real, according to the BBC, South African court rules. And the story goes, a South African court has dismissed claims of a white genocide in the country as clearly imagined, not really determining comments made by US President Donald Trump and his advisor, Elon Musk. The ruling came at the clock as a court blocked a wealthy benefactor's donation to a white supremacist group, Bora Logan. Grantland Machel Bray wanted to bequeath $2.1 million, that's 1.7 million pounds, to the group to help it further its message of racial hatred, hatred and separation.
My brain right now. I thought we were making the case for white genocide, but he wanted to bequeath $2.1 million to further their message of racial hatred and separation of whites against blacks. Is that, just so we're clear here? Okay, carry on.
Yes, that's the case. Yeah, that's the case. Okay. So, but the court ruled that the request was invalid, vague, and contrary to public policy. Trump has referred to the large-scale killing of farmers in South Africa. Musk has condemned what he said as racist ownership laws and previously condemned the genocide of white people. So the court action was brought by Mr. Grays, that is the guy who wanted to bequeath the money, who were also trustees and beneficiary of the family trust. In it, they claimed that their brother had become obsessed with the idea of an impending genocide of white people in South Africa in the last 10 years of his life. He died in March 2022. And so if you go back, the idea of white genocide was not in the news media prior to 2022. And so it stemmed from this court. Social media. Remember what was happening around that time?
The fact that we keep repeating it then gives it credence. It's like when people say the left and the right and who's pro-democracy, or they say who's pro-life. And I'm like, pro-life, if you're pro-life, but after the child, when the mother is carrying the baby, you deny her health care. After the baby's born, you deny them food and shelter and education and health care. And at the slightest excuse that you can find, you lock them up in jail. You are not pro-life. If you are pro the death penalty, you are not pro-life. But the more we keep using those terms, we give it credence. So I don't even want to use that term anymore. There is no genocide against white people. White people have decimated the entire globe. Everywhere they have gone, I challenge anybody, let's sit side by side and get the books they've written. Everywhere the white man has gone, they have killed people. They have destroyed the land. They have polluted the water. Animals have died in droves. The landscape has completely been changed. Are you kidding me? Who purveyors of genocide? They are at war with nature and everybody else because they are afraid that their little minority, and I'm not even going to start quoting Cresswellson here, Francis Cresswellson, that they really are the weakest link. I didn't say that. These are their fears. If they would live and let live, the Igbo people would say, which means basically let the hawk, let the dove, let them all live in peace. Let them all be able to perch on a branch and live. But if there's one that says the other one shouldn't live, let that one die. If you are trying to kill off everybody else and destroy the environment that protects and provides for the rest of humanity, you signed your death warrant. And I don't have to co-sign it. But again, with all of these newspapers, these people are not our friends. These people are not truth tellers. And so, yes, we pay attention. Yes, we read, but it's really important that we're reading outside of that and we're thinking critically and we're having the conversations that we should have beyond 2 seconds, beyond someone coined a term in 2022 or whatever. These gray siblings, they just want to keep that $2.1 million to themselves. Listen, I'm not going to do a deep dive into them. I'm sure in other ways they're propping up white racism. White racism, because there's no black supremacy,
but not to the tune of 2.1.
They just don't want that sum of money going to some other group.
They're not to the
yeah, exactly.
That's too much propping. That's too much propping. It's like, come on. We can talk $10,000, but come on, 2-point-something million
about the truth. Period. And their brother that they're saying it was just in the last 10 years of his life. What happened in his last 10 years of his life? First of all, that guy got paralyzed. Their brother got paralyzed at age 26, fighting what war? Fighting against who? Fighting for what? And he got to, where did that 2.1 million that he was giving away come from? You know, let's dig deeper. Where did the family amass their wealth from? Who helped them build that wealth who was not compensated? Paralyzed or not, he lived a long life and he had a great life, and he increasingly, like Robert Kennedy, worms eating his brain and seeing shadows where they're not, because the hatred in your heart you think that you have for other people, you're going to project it on them and say they have it for you. And then now I should waste my energy talking about these people? Donald Trump is a degenerate human being.
True.
And anything he does is not about advancing humanity. It's about advancing, actually, not even white supremacy. It's about advancing himself. It's just a power grab for himself. Now, other people may see him as a tool to achieve the things that they want to achieve, including Mark Rubio, who has forgotten that there are tapes of him talking about Donald Trump being wanting to be a strong and acting like a third world dictator and so on and so forth. And now he's fallen right in line as well. So your listeners need to definitely be reading beyond these so-called.
So on that piece, there's something that stood out to me, and it was the fact that somebody could take a group, a white supremacist group, to court, saying you cannot have our money, our brother's money. Like you said, yes, probably they thought, come on, you can't be getting all this money. But at the same time, putting that out there, that this is a white supremacist group, and that group comes out and says, yeah, this is who we are. And Trump is of the opinion that these same people are being killed. How is it that you can move around in public with that as your emblem and yet accuse the people who completely don't even see you of trying to exterminate
we're suspending all belief here, and most people
I just
go
don't
along
get it.
with it.
I don't get it.
The same reason you can try to marginalize Malema, but you say nothing about the existence of this group. And you don't do a big deep dive and expose on who else is propping them up and where they're getting their resources from. And I wouldn't be surprised if Elon Musk's family is somehow involved in that, because Where did Elon Musk get his start? What is his father known for? What is his maternal grandfather known for? Y'all want to write some articles? Write some articles on that. Yeah, do a deep dive into this this group that that was going to be bequeathed $2.1 million. What were they going to do with that money? And how much money have they been given over the years? And what have they been doing in South Africa with that deep hatred? This is who they say they are. Why not do a deep dive on that? Because last time I checked, Malema didn't kill anybody. He's just trying to get the land back for his people, because without access to their land, just as Wangari Maathai talked about, the people perish, which is the same reason why here in the United States of America, the indigenous Americans, if you want to call them that, the indigenous people, were dispossessed of their land, and that was genocide. And then after the end of the Civil War, what did the American government make sure they did not do? They made sure they did not give land to Black people, to the so-called freedmen, because we understand the importance of land. And dispossessing people of land, keeping them from land is the genocide. What is happening in Gaza right now? Why does Trump want the land? Oh, come on now, people. Let's connect this stuff.
Yes.
This thing is not rocket science.
No, I mean, I was going to mention that.
I was going to mention
that here is a genocide being perpetrated,
that you're financing and propping up Netanyahu. You want to talk about some white genocide? Man, please. I'm never even going to say that phrase again. It doesn't make any sense. We have another.
So, I mean, we go to our final story. One final story. I mean, this one just sort of corroborates the point we've highlighted in terms of
today. I don't want to read these
being factual. So it's the BBC fact-checking Trump's Oval Office confrontation with Ramaphosa.
Wait a second.
So it reads,
the same BBC
I'm just going to quickly
that covered up
it.
what
the video
UK
also
did in Biafra, and how they were supporting one side and causing genocide of the Biafran. Is it that same BBC? Okay,
no,
I'm just checking. What did the BBC
focus.
say? Because I'm dying to find out.
We need
to
focus.
What did my friend say?
We need to focus. So, Donald Trump confronted Cyril Ramaphosa during a test exchange in the White House on Wednesday with a series of contested claims. About the killings of white Africans in South Africa. So, the video included footage showing rows of crosses which claims were burial sites for modern white farmers, and presented Ramaphosa with copies of articles which he said documented widespread brutality against South African white minority. Supporters of the Trump administration have long amplified claims of violence against white minority, notably Elon Musk and former Fox News host Tucker Carlson ran segments on the supposed genocide during the president's first term. Some of the claims were demonstratively false.
You said it was
so did rows of crosses mark graves?
Okay.
So did rows of crosses mark graves of white farmers? The footage played by Trump in the Oval Office showed rows of white crosses stretching far into the distance along a rural road. Trump claimed they were the burial sites right there. Burial sites. Over thousands of white farmers, he said. It's not a burial site. It was a memorial. Bob Hostin, one of the organizers of the event, told the BBC. He said the crosses were erected as a temporary memorial to the couple. And there you go. So that was a picture of what you saw that Trump showed Ramaphosa. The BBC Verify has geolocated the footage into an area in KwaZulu-Natal province near the town of Newcastle. Google Street View imagery captured in May 2023, almost 3 years after the footage of first appeared online, showed that the crosses were no longer standing. And so there you go. That's what we're supposed to be looking at. So, yeah, no crosses. So, Mr. Trump, has there been a genocide of white farmers? In the meeting, Trump said a lot of people were concerned with regards to Southern Africa. We've had many people who feel they were persecuted and they were coming to the USA. We've taken from many locations if we feel there's persecution of genocide going on.
Go back to that.
And yeah, whatever.
a lot of people, who are the people, are very concerned with yes, but who are the people? We have many people that feel they're being persecuted. Who did Trump meet with? Who are the people that he has been in consultation with who are feeling persecuted? What is the persecution that they're feeling? A sense of equality? Because this is the administration that feels that anybody, quote unquote, of color, I hate that term, any non-white male really does not need to be in any position of power. So who are the people that are feeling persecuted? What is the source of this persecution? Okay, carry on.
Okay, so, and it goes on, it says, the country has one of the highest murder rates in the world. There were 26,232 murders last year. I wonder what the number in the United States is. According to South African police figures, of these, 44 were killings of peoples within the family community, and of which 8 were farmers. In February, a South African judge, which is the news article we dealt with, dismissed the idea of a genocide as clearly imagined and not real. So I leave it there because now we're just repeating ourselves. So question is, how do we counter all these false narratives when we get them? I suppose we do our part here, but how do we do it going forward? Individual.
Well, I mean, certainly the work that you're doing is important. There are other entities that are also shining a light on these stories that oftentimes people just take at face value. I think in addition to that, and maybe more importantly, because that's what allows us the lens to understand when we're being lied to, is that we need to study our own history. We need to be curious enough about who we are wherever we live, not just to be ignorant about what else is going on around the world, and to trust your own enemies to give you the truth about what is happening. We need to understand that we are all connected and that what happens to one across the globe impacts us as well. And when we stop thinking as individuals and start looking at ourselves as a collective, we will show more care and concern for what is happening in other places, which hopefully will allow us to connect it to what is happening to right where we are. I'm in Texas. I feel like I'm in the belly of the beast itself. So much that happens in the United States of America starts in terms of racism, starts here in Texas. And then we just kind of broadcast it to the rest of the country and say, hey, we got it done here. You guys can replicate this in other places as well. And so what needs to be done is we need to really monitor what we're doing with our time. How you live your hour is how you live your day, is how you live your life. And so, I often tell my children this, you've got 24 hours in the day. Let's say you sleep 8 hours. That gives you another 16 hours. And you need to ask yourself, what am I doing with that? So if you're not finding time to read, if you're not finding time to think critically about things, that is a problem. And your ignorance is going to allow you to be part of the problem. Your ignorance is going to allow you to be a sitting duck every time for what people like Donald Trump and those propping him up do. And so it's very important for us to study, to think. And I would also say, this is graduation season here in the United States and in other parts of the world as well. I'm not going to say that I've been supremely successful in this, but one of the questions I pose to my children is, what problem do you see in the world? And how do you think you can be a part of the solution? So going to get a degree or what you do with your time and your life isn't just about how can I make the most money? How much money are you going to spend when you die? And don't get me wrong, I understand, I have a roof over my head. I have a car. I have access to the internet. I have a device that we're using for this. And that there is a place for resources in this capitalist world that we live in at this time. But at the same time, I don't want them to fall into this trap of being only propelled by money. I do not know Brother Cyril Ramaphosa personally. I do know that he knows enough about the South African history. He knows enough, and he has seen up front what apartheid does. He's seen what racial hatred does. He knows enough to know that we should not be fighting to prop up a capitalist system. and that he should not in any way, and I'm not saying that he did, but we should not be kissing the ring of a criminal such as Donald Trump. Not my words. The judicial system in the United States found him guilty 34 times of felonies. I don't have one, so I can say that. And so, yes, we have work to do, and summer is a fantastic time. Now, I know it's summer in this hemisphere. It's about to be winter in some other hemispheres, but this is as great a time as any to look at your day and say, what book, what can I listen to, what can I read on a daily basis to start broadening my horizon? And then to the extent that you and I are both part of a group of people who've come together and have been learning and growing and discussing under the brilliance of Dr. Greg Carr, I would encourage people, seek out those kind of groups as well. Go on YouTube. You can find, I don't know what episode are we on now, is it wasn't in 264, 265?
Narrative.
I've lost track.
Narrative.
I just know that every week I show up.
I just turn up.
I can't keep up with the books that
I don't even look at the number anymore.
I'm doing my very best, every day to take a little bite. Yes. But thank you for the work that you're doing, and thank you for the opportunity to go through this. Again, I would just say, and as we do this reading and critical thinking work, even those crosses that were put up to memorialize 2 white farmers who were killed. It was put up by Rob Watson, who's a local businessman, and ask what that means, and neighbor of the Raffertys who were killed. What crosses did he put up for the thousands and millions of Black South Africans who've been killed? When we talk about South Africa is the murder capital of the world, and we talk about the extent of the crime in South Africa, go back to the history. You just talked about the Boer War and the concentration camps and 22,000 being killed in the camp. Who brought this violence there? Who corralled people into open prisons the same way they did to the Palestinians in Gaza and created inhumane living circumstances for people? And you make sure that you restrict their access to resources and turn around and wonder why people may sometimes now see each other as enemies because they're fighting for resources in an area where the scarcity is artificial. It was man-made. It was white man-made. So, how do you turn around and create a situation? You come into my house and you trash it. And then you turn around and take video and say, look at how she lives. She lives in a trashed house. She don't even know how to take care of her stuff. But you don't tell the beginning part of the story that you came in and trashed it. Come on now.
So a quick link of history. When the British came up with the idea of the concentration camp in 1902 in South Africa, at the Nuremberg trial in Nuremberg, Germany, the first question that was put to one of the German generals on show was, tell us what happened. And the guy said, no, I'm not going to tell you what happened. I'm going to tell you where we got the idea from. And the prosecutor said, no. Tell us what happened. He said, it's either you want us to tell you where we got the idea from. And when the guy kept pushing back, he said, well, I will tell you what you don't want to hear. We only perfected what you started. He told the British lawyer that we only perfected what you started. So post the Holocaust, the Jewish Holocaust in Germany, and then they said, never again. We knew that was not the case because the Britain then use that idea in Kenya in the 1950s, used it in Malaysia in the 1950s. Yeah. The idea was also then used by the Americans in the Vietnam War. The idea of concentration camps. So this concept of creating, of having history that, people just think they're strands. There are also connecting dots. Speaking of history, for people who want to know more about the South African space, you can read Brother Gerald Horne's book, White Supremacy Confronted. And he talks about all the areas of Southern Africa. Yeah, it's quite heavy. It's quite chunky, but
you survive.
You survive.
Those brain muscles will get stronger. We can do this. Well, not only can we do it, we have to do it. We have
you
to
survive.
do it for our future generations. We plant the trees now that we are not going to sit under. We plant it for the next generation.
That's the wisdom of the African mind. Yeah. So yes, for those who are just joining us, we've been reviewing the news articles that showcase Africa. I mean, specifically, we were referring to the claim of white genocide by Trump at the White House in the course of the week. And we did as much as possible to debunk said narrative. And if you like what you've heard so far, like, share, and subscribe. But also be minded that Wednesday, the sister and I will do another episode of Women and Resistance. This time we're looking at the lives and times of Angela Lee Crumpler.
Yes. And if you've never heard of her, tune in.
Rebecca Lee Crumpler. Yes, tune in. And yes, the final thoughts will go to
I want to commend you because for the work that you do. Because I'm telling you, reading these articles, I want to slap somebody and I want to spend my time on it. But when lies are being told and they're not debunked, they stand in as facts for people who are not doing that work and thinking through. So the work that you're doing is extremely important. And thank you for how dedicated you are and committed to this work. And thank you for the opportunity to be in conversation with you today.
I'm sure the good comrades watching
would have been a lot more dignified.
Would be proud that somebody is
taller.
No, he is. Well, all the same, I'm sure he would be proud. He would be proud that you did a stellar job. And again, thank you for coming in at short notice. And yes, again, we do what we do here. So subscribe. Support. You can join our Patreon. Our Patreon link is on the YouTube page. Like, share, subscribe, leave your comments, which is much more important. Leave your comments on the post. That way, even stories that we don't spot, you spot them, we're able to, hone in on them and, do justice accordingly. I thank you all for coming through, and until next week, it's good night and God bless.
That's a wrap for this week on the African News Review Podcast. We hope you are leaving with a clearer, more truthful picture of Africa. Remember, every story has another side, and we're here to uncover it. Don't forget to join us next Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern as we continue to challenge the narratives and reclaim Africa's voice. If you've enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep seeing Africa for what it truly is.